Hello and welcome to my FDA304 final project submission. This is my full playthrough of my finished level environment. For my submission, the assessment was to create a small 4 versus 4 multiplayer shooter map. I made the decision to choose this brief for the assessment because multiplayer shooters are one of my favourite genres to play. So working on a level design myself will be of much interest to me, and an area of game design I would like to work on in the future. The game I based my design on was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. This is a game I play often and feel familiar with how the game works, so I thought this would be a good game to base my level idea on. My initial idea for my level design was to create an Egyptian themed level based around a destroyed pyramid. After discussion with my lecturer, it was decided that this wouldn't be a suitable level design for a multiplayer map. This was due to map balancing issues and the layout and structuring of a pyramid. After this discussion, I decided to rethink my level idea and I decided to come up with an abandoned supermarket theme. The idea behind my level environment is that the supermarket and the surrounding area has been abandoned due to war crimes committed by the Quad Force. Ballistic missiles have held down onto the supermarket and surrounding area, causing destruction throughout. This is what's being showcased now throughout my playthrough. As you can see, I have multiple areas in my level design that resemble a typical supermarket environment. These areas include a supermarket, car park, staff car park, an entrance path, a recycling area and a smokers area. As you can see, there is destruction throughout my level environment. This was caused by the ballistic strikes. I have also created the inside of the supermarket. The supermarket has multiple entrance points, which is important for a shooter style game. It also has an abandoned feel to it with the layout of the store inside, as well as the lighting I have created. Throughout my level design, I have made sure there is multiple paths for the player to use to navigate around the level environment. I have also ensured there is cover throughout the level, which has been done by various static meshes and built up landscape. I have also added particle effects to add to the destruction feel of the level. I have also added a low level of detailed background and landscape to fill up the surrounding areas. I have made these areas in low level of detail as the player would not be able to access them. It is now time to show you how I made my level design, starting with the pre-production phase. I first did some research on level design theory and practices. With this being the first time creating a multiplayer shooter map, I wanted to look into how level designs are created and the reason behind why things are done the way they are. After looking at several sources, I found the website World of Level Design particularly useful. Within the page CSGO How to Design Gameplay Map Layouts, I discovered the importance of things like pathway, choke points, the map balancing structure and the flow. Next I did some research on map sizing. Looking into previous Call of Duty maps, I wanted to base my size of my level environment off the popular Call of Duty map Nuketown, as I felt this would be a suitable size for a 4 versus 4 multiplayer shooter map. Once I did my research, it was on to creating some 2D diagrams of the map design I wanted to create. This first image is the initial design for my level idea. This design is a general idea of how I want the layout of the map in regards to buildings and areas of the map. At this stage, I haven't considered the important factors in multiplayer map designs. This was also noticed by my lecturer who gave me some initial feedback on my first design. So I went back and made an improved design of my level layout. The new layout shows the ground level of my level environment. I have added a lot more cover to the map, adding a number of different objects and built up terrain. I have also added multiple entrances to the supermarket and car park. This was done so if a team or player was inside the supermarket or car park, they would have to focus on multiple entrance points instead of just one point of entry, making it harder to hold the point of this map. I have also created a layout for the second level of the map, which shows the top of the supermarket and the top of the car park. Both of these areas will have a second tier which players will have access to them. These areas will also have multiple cover, as well as multiple entrance points for the same reason as I said before. Now that I had a more suitable layout for a multiplayer shooter map, it was time to move on to the reference phase of the development. I created a pure ref document with the sort of things I wanted in my level design. After showing my lecture, I was advised to consider an actual location for my level environment. My initial thought process for the location for the environment was just some place in America. This wasn't very specific and not well suited for a Call of Duty map. Every map in Call of Duty has a specific location for the map, so this is something I needed to implement into my design. At this time, I also haven't considered the surrounding area and the background area of the map, which is also very important to create realism to my environment. After receiving this feedback, I decided to do more research and add more to my reference board. I decided I wanted my level environment to be located in Estes Park, Colorado. I like this location for my level as it has lots of mountains and hills around the town area, and this would be an ideal background setting for my level. So I updated my PureRef document to reflect this, and I've also organised it better, so for example if a game artist needed to look at it, they would be able to understand the style I am going for. With the layout of the map designed and the reference document in place for my level environment, I moved on to the production stage of my level design. Using Unreal 4.27, I started making a basic blockout using BSPs. I started with the basic blockout to get the sizing and layout of my map correctly. Once I was happy with the sizing, I moved on to a more complex blockout. Using the BSP brushes, I made more complex shapes and objects to replicate the things I wanted in my level environment. This is done because if a game artist was to be involved in my project, they would have a better understanding on what objects I want to be created in my level environment. Using the landscape tool within Unreal, I created the destroyed terrain I was going for within my level environment, which will also be used for cover throughout the map. At this stage of development, I was able to get some play testing done from my classmates. The feedback was generally positive, but there were some issues I noticed whilst people were playing. The main issue that occurred was that players were able to escape the map in many areas due to the built-up terrain, as well as some areas of the map not having enough cover or too much cover. These are things I would fix throughout the process of my production phase. After my blockout was created, I wanted to focus on the background and the surrounding areas to the level environment. To do this, I added to the landscape and created a mountain in the background, as well as a background town which was created in low level of detail. At this stage of development, I am happy with the blockout phase of my level environment. So I moved on to making some blueprints for my level. Following YouTube tutorials, I was able to create a ladder system. This was placed on the car park and the supermarket to gain access to the higher ground. The second blueprint was to create the broken door mechanic for the entrance of the supermarket. The third blueprint was an out of bounds system. This would help with the issues I had with people escaping my level environment. If the player was to go out of bounds, a timer would count down and place the player back into the map. With the blockout, the landscape and the blueprints in place, it was now time to implement static meshes and replace the BSP brushes that I have made. Using free source websites such as Free3D, Sketchfab and TurboSquid, I downloaded and imported the static meshes into Unreal, and then I added the textures to them provided with the objects. These are some of the examples that I have used. I also downloaded 3D models and placed them in 3ds Max and made changes to them to give them a more destroyed look. I did this to help with my level environment and the theme I was going for. Once I made the changes to them, I would import them into Maya to take advantage of the automatic UV editor, and then would place them in Adobe Substance Paint and textured them to how I wanted them to look in my scene. I also made a number of 3D models to fit my scene. This was also done in 3ds Max, then placed in Maya for the UV editor, and then added to Adobe Substance Paint to texture. Here is an example of the process with the car park I have made. Here are some of the examples that I have made. I have now imported them and textured them in Unreal Engine. Now I have all the 3D models that I want to use for my project. I added them to my game environment by swapping them with the BSPs that I have made previously. Here are some screenshots of the added 3D models throughout my level environment. Once I'd done this, I made some changes to the landscape based on the feedback I got previously in a playtest. After making the changes, I then textured the landscape following a YouTube tutorial and added a number of textures, and created and textured the low level of detail town in the background. The next step was to create some environment lighting and some light sources throughout the map. For the environment lighting, I followed a YouTube guide on how to make a nighttime scene. Once this was implemented into my game environment, I would make a number of blueprint actors which had lights attached and point lights and directional lights. I also made a flickering blueprint light system following a YouTube tutorial, which was placed within the supermarket. To finish off my project, I wanted to add a number of particle effects throughout the level. Using the starter content within Unreal, I placed fire and smoke throughout the level to add to the destruction effect. For the post-production phase, my main focus was playtesting. Throughout the playtesting, I noticed the colliders for the 3D models didn't always align with the objects. To fix this issue, I would change the sizing of the colliders to match the object, as sometimes they were too big. Or I would create my own colliders by deleting the existing ones and adding a number of box colliders to fit the 3D model. Here is an example of the box colliders with the car park. Another issue I fixed was clipping of objects through the floor. This was fixed simply by moving the objects so they sat correctly on the level environment. I also made sure all the blueprints I implemented were still working, and once I'd done this, I was happy with the playtesting of my level environment. As I said before, I chose this brief because multiplayer shooters are one of my favourite genres to play and something I'd like to work on in the future. Using Call of Duty as my game reference, and specifically the map Nuketown for my sizing of my map, I feel this works well for a 4 versus 4 multiplayer shooter map. Using SD Park, Colorado as my reference location, I feel this area works well as the surrounding areas fill up the map environment, giving a realistic look to the map. Doing the research on multiplayer map design, I feel this helped me with how I design my map, and will continue to do research to improve my knowledge on this genre. I feel the 3D models I have added and created translate well from my blockout phase. They resemble the design look I was going for, and I'm happy with the outcome of the map. I could have made improvements to things like the landscape, as some areas don't look great and the textures of the floor look stretched and lower resolution to the 3D models. So this is an area I will look to improve on in the future with research and practice. A challenge I faced was not being able to find specific 3D models I wanted for my design. This meant I spent a lot of time making 3D models myself. Although this did give me an opportunity to refine and improve my 3D modelling skills on 3ds Max, and to learn the basics of using Adobe Substance Paint, which I haven't used before, I felt this took away from me being able to tune the design aspects of the level, as well as implement other things such as more blueprints and gameplay mechanics. If I was to do the project again, I would in my pre-production phase find a game kit or a 3D model pack that would fit my level idea, so I could spend more time implementing other things to my level and improving the design aspects to my level. Most of my post-production phase was spent on playtesting. This was to fix the colliders for my 3D models and to fix clipping issues I had throughout my level environment. Once I fixed these issues, I did another playtest and I was happy with the outcome to my level. Unfortunately, I was not able to get any playtesting done by my peers and classmates, and in future projects I will make sure in my post-production phase I get testing done by others, as they will be able to see my level differently and pick up on mistakes that I may have missed. If I was to do this project again, I would implement more blueprints to the level as well as more interactive parts to the environment. Things like interactive doors and destructible meshes. But for this being my only second project made in Unreal Engine, I am happy with the outcome and the progress I am making, and I'm excited to see what I can design in the future following this project. In the description to my video is a link to my devlog which goes into more detail on the development stages of my project. But thank you for your time and thank you for watching.